Realizing the growing threat posed by the Christian kingdoms in northern Al-Andalus, the Taifa king sought the aid of Yusuf ibn Tashfin, who crossed into Al-Andalus with 7,000 warriors.
It is worth noting that the weakness that afflicted the Taifa kingdom stemmed from the fragmentation that gripped Al-Andalus following the collapse of the Umayyad state. To understand the historical context, we must look back a little earlier when the reins of power in the Umayyad Caliphate of Al-Andalus fell into the hands of the distinguished military commander named Al-Mansur ibn Abi Amir, known as Al-Ajib al-Mansur. He became the de facto ruler during the reign of Caliph Hisham ibn al-Hakam, who was still a child at the time. Al-Ajib al-Mansur led numerous military campaigns against the Christian kingdoms of northern Spain, securing resounding victories that cemented Al-Andalus as a dominant power. Among his most significant triumphs were the battles of Santa Maria, Santram in Portugal, Calais, Calatayud, and Barcelona, one of the strongest Christian fortresses, as well as the Battle of Santiago de Compostela. It is recorded that he waged over 50 battles and emerged victorious in every one, striking fear into the hearts of his enemies. Thus, he established what became known as the Umayyad state, which, while not an independent entity, functioned as a state within a state. Though officially subordinate to the Umayyad Caliphate, the Umayyad caliphs held no real authority during this period.
In the year 1001, Al-Ajib al-Mansur achieved a decisive victory over the Kingdom of Castile. However, he passed away the following year in 1002 on his journey back. His son, Abd al-Malik ibn al-Mansur, succeeded him, managing to maintain stability for a brief period. Upon his death, his brother Abd al-Rahman, known as Shanjal, assumed power and compelled the caliph to name him heir apparent. This decision incited the anger of the Andalusians, as the throne was meant to remain within the Umayyad lineage. A wave of uprisings erupted in Córdoba, culminating in the assassination of Shanjal and the deposition of Caliph Hisham al-Mu'ayyad Billah, who had been little more than a figurehead for Umayyad rule. Muhammad al-Mahdi Billah was appointed as caliph, but his reign was short-lived, and Córdoba descended into internal wars and conflicts that officially ended the Umayyad state and shattered the authority of the central government. In 1031, the Umayyad Caliphate fell entirely, giving rise to the fragmented and independent Taifa kingdoms. This era of weakness and division emboldened the Christian kingdoms to invade Islamic cities and fortresses. Finding themselves powerless against the Christian onslaught, the Taifa kings saw no alternative but to seek the aid of Yusuf ibn Tashfin, the leader of the Almoravids, who crossed into Al-Andalus in 1086 to rescue the land. He was joined by volunteers under the command of Al-Mu'tamid ibn Abad, forming an army of 30,000 men that marched north toward the Kingdom of Castile. There, they confronted the forces of Alfonso VI in the Battle of Sagrajas in 1086, securing a decisive victory that halted the Christian advance into Al-Andalus. However, after Ibn Tashfin returned to Morocco, the Taifa rulers once again descended into internal conflicts. In response, he returned to Al-Andalus in 1090, bringing most of its territories under Almoravid rule and putting an end to the era of the Taifa kingdoms. Under his leadership, Al-Andalus witnessed a period of cultural flourishing and relative stability.
Yet this stability proved fleeting, and in the first half of the 12th century, the Almoravid power began to wane due to internal uprisings and external wars. Following Ibn Tashfin's death, his son, Ali ibn Yusuf, succeeded him, continuing the consolidation of the realm. Zaragoza was the last city to fall under Almoravid rule in 1110. However, even before that, in 1102, the Almoravids withdrew from Valencia, allowing it to fall effortlessly into the hands of Alfonso VI of Castile. This loss was a significant blow to the Muslims of Al-Andalus, and marked the beginning of a series of setbacks that followed the relative stability under Almoravid rule. The Castilians continued their relentless pressure on the remaining Islamic territories, while the Almoravids gradually weakened, paving the way for the emergence of a new power in the region. During the reign of Tashfin ibn Ali, the Almohad movement began to rise in the Maghreb, a religious and political movement founded by Mahdi ibn Tumurt in the late 11th century.
In the year 1144, the Almohad successfully annexed Tlemcen and Oran in the central Maghreb, before expanding further in the western Maghreb, bringing Fez, Ceuta, and Sale under their rule. They then advanced toward Marrakesh, laying siege to the city for 9 months until it fell in 1147, marking the end of the Almoravid dynasty and the rise of the Almohads. Their expansion continued, and by 1160, they had extended their dominion along the northwestern coast of Africa, capturing Algiers, Tripoli, and Mahdia. With their conquest of the Maghreb complete, they also inherited control over Al-Andalus, ushering in a renewed period of relative stability and military expansion. Under Almohad rule, the Muslims achieved significant victories against the Christian kingdoms, the most notable being the Battle of Al-Arkas in 1195. This battle saw Sultan Abu Yusuf Yaqub al-Mansur lead the Almohad forces to a resounding triumph over the Castilian army commanded by Alfonso VIII. The victory at Al-Arkas bolstered Almohad rule in Al-Andalus, allowing them to consolidate their power and reinforce their military and political standing. It also restored the confidence of Muslims in their ability to resist the advancing Christian kingdoms of the north. In the aftermath of the battle, the Muslims reclaimed several key cities, including Trujillo, Plasencia, Talavera, Cuenca, Calatrava la Vieja, and numerous other fortresses. Yet no power remains unchallenged forever, and following the death of Abu Yusuf Yaqub al-Mansur, the Almohad authority began to wane. Sensing an opportunity, Alfonso VIII sought to avenge his previous defeat and appealed to Pope Innocent III, urging him to declare a crusade in Europe. The call was answered, and Christian reinforcements arrived from Italy and France, bolstering the strength of the allied Christian forces.
By the year 1212, the Christian kingdoms had unified and amassed an even greater military force. Their armies clashed with the Almohad forces under Sultan Muhammad al-Nasir in the decisive Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa. The Almohads suffered a devastating defeat, and the remnants of their army retreated back to the Maghreb. The defeat at the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa marked the beginning of the end for Almohad rule, and more broadly, the Islamic presence in Al-Andalus. As the Christian kingdom seized the initiative, advancing steadily southward, capitalizing on the weakening and gradual disintegration of Almohad authority. This shift paved the way for the rise of the Kingdom of Castile as the dominant power in the Iberian Peninsula, leading to the successive fall of numerous Islamic cities and fortresses. And in just 35 years, by 1248, the Balearic Islands, Córdoba, Valencia, Jaén, Seville, Arcos, Cádiz, Sidonia, and nearly all of Al-Andalus had succumbed to Christian conquest, except for Granada, which remained under the rule of the Nasrid dynasty. The fall of Córdoba and Seville, in particular, at the hands of Ferdinand III of Leon, provided a significant impetus to the Christian Reconquista, further diminishing Muslim influence in the region. Large numbers of Muslims and Jews were expelled, and many mosques were converted into churches. Granada, however, endured as a resilient stronghold for nearly 2.5 centuries, serving as the final refuge of Muslim rule in Al-Andalus, as the rest of the Islamic states crumbled under the Reconquista.
During this period, a formidable Islamic power was rising in Anatolia, the Ottoman Empire, founded by Osman Ghazi in 1299. Initially a small principality in Asia Minor, the Ottomans expanded into a vast empire stretching across Europe, Asia, and Africa, supplanting the Byzantines and Seljuks. In later years, the empire would become a sanctuary for persecuted Jews fleeing from the Iberian Peninsula. Meanwhile, in Al-Andalus, Alfonso X of Castile, with the support of Aragonese forces, quelled a rebellion that had erupted in his kingdom. Following his death in 1284, his son Sancho IV succeeded him, maintaining a degree of stability and reinforcing control over the reclaimed territories. In 1309, Castilian forces, led by Ferdinand IV, successfully captured Algeciras, the strategically significant port on the southern coast of Al-Andalus. This victory severed crucial maritime connections between Al-Andalus and North Africa, significantly weakening the flow of reinforcements and supplies to the remaining Muslim strongholds. After the death of Ferdinand IV in 1312, his son Alfonso XI succeeded him and continued the wars against the Muslims in Al-Andalus, seeking to strengthen Castilian control over the region and aiming to conquer Granada, which was ruled at the time by Abu al-Hajjaj Yusuf. As Castilian pressure on Granada intensified, Abu al-Hajjaj Yusuf sought help from Sultan Abu al-Hasan al-Marini, the ruler of Morocco. In response, the Sultan sent his son, Prince Abu Malik, at the head of an army that engaged in battle against a coalition of Castilian, Aragonese, and Portuguese forces. However, the Muslim army suffered a crushing defeat, and Prince Abu Malik was killed.
Determined to avenge the loss, Sultan Abu al-Hasan assembled a powerful army, which was joined by the forces of Sultan Abu al-Hajjaj Yusuf, ruler of Granada. Together, they faced Alfonso XI and the Portuguese army in the Battle of Rio Salado in 1340. Despite the numerical superiority of the Muslim forces, the Christian army secured a decisive victory. Sultan Abu al-Hasan retreated to Morocco, while Abu al-Hajjaj Yusuf withdrew to Granada. So the Battle of Rio Salado marked another tragic chapter in Islamic history, akin to the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa, and had a profound impact on the course of the war and the history of the region. The battle significantly weakened the Muslims' ability to defend their remaining territories in Al-Andalus while bolstering the Christian kingdom's control over the Iberian Peninsula, further motivating them to continue their campaigns against the remaining Islamic cities and fortresses, to the extent that Alfonso XI planned to cross into Morocco and confront the Marinid state in its own stronghold. However, he died in 1350 during the Black Death while besieging Gibraltar. His son Pedro I succeeded him. With the death of Alfonso XI, Castile descended into political turmoil, with internal conflicts and rivalries over the throne. This culminated in a civil war, during which Pedro I was killed in 1369 by his half-brother, Henry II, who emerged victorious and took the Castilian throne. Although Castile remained steadfast in its goal of reclaiming territories from the Muslims and expanding its influence in the region, this conflict played a significant role in prolonging the rule of the Muslim Emirate of Granada and maintaining its relative stability, despite Castile's continued military pressure through successive campaigns. And by the year 1408, the Emirate of Granada continued to grapple with formidable challenges, both external and internal. Following the death of Emir Yusuf III, Muhammad VIII ascended to the throne, yet his reign was soon embroiled in fierce power struggles among the royal family and the nobility, leading to political unrest and further weakening the kingdom's ability to withstand external threats.
Throughout this turbulent period, and until 1454, Yusuf IV and Muhammad IX alternated in power multiple times due to ongoing internal conflicts and uprisings. However, Castile itself was not immune to similar turmoil, particularly under the rule of John II, whose reign was marred by internal strife, hindering the kingdom's ability to fully execute its designs against Granada. In 1464, Abu al-Hasan assumed the throne of Granada following a series of internal disputes and coups. He sought to restore order within the realm and fortify its defenses. Nevertheless, Castile was steadily moving towards stability and preparing for a decisive campaign against the last Muslim stronghold in the Iberian Peninsula. By 1468, Henry IV of Castile officially recognized his sister, Isabella I, as his legitimate heir, an act that resolved years of contention over succession following the Castilian War of Succession, which had erupted between Henry's daughter, Joanna, and his half-sister, Isabella. A year later, in 1469, Isabella wed Ferdinand II of Aragon, a union that led to the consolidation of the two most powerful Christian kingdoms in Iberia under a single rule. Upon the death of Henry IV in 1474, Isabella I ascended to the throne of Castile alongside her husband, Ferdinand II. The royal couple immediately set their sights on the last Muslim stronghold in Al-Andalus, as the circumstances had become ripe for a final reconquest aimed at bringing Granada to its knees, a kingdom already weakened by internal strife and an uncertain future. Granada was ravaged by internal strife, and its central authority grew increasingly frail. The state also suffered from internal divisions among the princes at court, further diminishing its ability to confront mounting threats. In the year 1482, tensions escalated between Sultan Abu al-Hasan Ali and his son Muhammad XII, known as Abu Abdullah al-Sagar. Seeing in his father's weakness and hesitation an opportunity to seize power, he led an internal rebellion through which he successfully overthrew his father and claimed the throne.
That same year, Isabella and Ferdinand launched their ultimate campaign against Granada, beginning with the sieges of Malaga and Baza, culminating in the decisive siege of the capital itself in 1491. The Christian forces imposed a relentless blockade, driving the city into despair and accelerating its collapse. Recognizing the hopelessness of his position, Boabdil, the 22nd and final ruler of Granada, conceded defeat and agreed to surrender the city to the Catholic monarchs. And on the 2nd of January 1492, Christian forces entered Granada, marking the end of nearly 8 centuries of Muslim rule in Al-Andalus. With this, the Iberian Peninsula was united under Christian dominion, laying the foundation for a unified kingdom of Spain.
It is worth noting that in the same pivotal year, 1492, Isabella and Ferdinand financed Christopher Columbus's voyage, which led to the European colonization of the New World and ushered in the age of exploration and imperial expansion. In the aftermath of Granada's fall, the region underwent profound transformations. The Catholic monarchs issued the Alhambra Decree as part of a broader policy aimed at religious unification by eradicating religious diversity within the realm. The decree mandated the expulsion of Jews who refused to convert to Christianity. A similar edict would later be imposed on Muslims, forcing thousands into exile while others embraced Christianity to escape persecution or expulsion. Muslims who converted to Christianity and remained in Spain became known as the Moriscos, while Jews who embraced Christianity were called the Marranos. However, both groups endured severe religious and social persecution, as many had converted merely in appearance, while secretly preserving their Islamic and Jewish practices. Consequently, they remained under constant suspicion and surveillance by the Inquisition, an extraordinary ecclesiastical tribunal established earlier in 1478 to combat heresy and safeguard the unity of the Catholic faith. Following the fall of Granada, the Inquisition intensified its efforts to hunt down Moriscos and Marranos suspected of clandestinely adhering to their ancestral religions. It became the primary instrument for eradicating all non-Christian religious practices, which were deemed acts of heresy. It is an ecclesiastical concept signifying a departure from the official doctrine upheld by the Church, where any deviation from the established religious teachings is perceived as a threat to the unity of faith. This prompted the Inquisition to relentlessly seek out and punish those suspected of adhering to clandestine beliefs, whether they practiced Islamic or Jewish rites or embraced theological ideas that contradicted the prevailing Catholic doctrine of the time.
The tribunal relied on denunciations from informants or intelligence it gathered independently. At its height, during the 15th and 16th centuries, accused individuals faced interrogations that included torture to extract confessions. Trials were conducted in secrecy, and the accused, often sentenced to death by burning, were denied the right to defend themselves. Public spectacles known as autos de fe were held, during which the Inquisition's verdicts were proclaimed, and executions were carried out before vast crowds in public squares. This grim reality persisted until 1609, when King Philip III of Spain issued a decree ordering the final expulsion of the Moriscos from the country. Meanwhile, the Marranos continued to suffer unrelenting persecution. Notably, the Inquisition remained active for over 4 centuries, until its ultimate abolition in 1834. And in 2014, Spain officially acknowledged the historical injustices committed against the Moriscos, recognizing them as a stain on its past and one of the most infamous episodes of religious persecution in history. As a symbolic gesture of reparation, the Spanish government enacted a law granting citizenship to their descendants, an acknowledgement of the suffering that is still memorialized in Spanish museums to this day.
As a result of this persecution, hundreds of thousands of Muslims and Jews fled Al-Andalus, seeking refuge in more tolerant regions across Europe and the Islamic world, particularly in North Africa and the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans, renowned for their religious and cultural tolerance, welcomed the fleeing Jews, granting them protection and rights under the empire's governance. The Ottoman authorities established designated quarters for the Jewish communities in cities such as Istanbul, Salonika, and Safed, allowing them to settle and practice their faith freely alongside Muslims, Christians, and other minorities. However, as was often the case, they did not show gratitude. Among them emerged one who claimed to be the Messiah and sought to establish a Jewish empire within the Ottoman state. When his aspirations failed, he converted to Islam to save himself and his followers, who came to be known as the Donma Jews, or as some called them, the Jewish Muslims. Their conversion to Islam was merely superficial, as they secretly adhered to their Jewish faith, devising schemes and weaving conspiracies until 3 centuries later, from among their descendants, emerged a devilish figure whose actions played a pivotal role in the downfall of the last Islamic caliphate.